So first, I will introduce myself. This is our second meeting, but now you get a face to the name. So I'm Madeline, and I'm a fourth-year student at UVic. I'm taking biology, and I'm the director of communications for Elect Her. Elect Her, sort of our goal is to empower young women and people of marginalized genders to see themselves sort of in leadership positions that they might not have thought they could get to. And so we've been doing the speaker series to sort of talk to the women who have already done it and get the inspirational stories of all of the women out there that we possibly can. And so before we start, I'm just going to do a quick territorial acknowledgement. Being in Victoria, I am upon the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanich People's Territory. And I'd like to recognize that their vital relationships continue to this day. And so we just like to start that off. And then I'd like to thank you for being here today. And if you would like to give yourself a quick introduction, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, it's really nice to meet you in person, Madeline. And I'm also speaking to you from the traditional Lekwungen speaking people's territories, downtown Victoria. So my name is Susan Smitten. I'm currently, and for the last almost 12 years, have been the executive director of RAVEN, which is an acronym for Respecting Aboriginal Values and Environmental Needs. We're the only nonprofit charity in Canada, and I think in North America, that has a very niche mandate to raise legal defense funds in assistance of nations that choose to enforce their rights and title through the courts. And with the environmental rights piece, with a lens to protecting their lands, way of life, and culture.
And how did you sort of end up in that field?
It was an unexpected trajectory in the sense that I am a career journalist. I have a degree from Carleton, and I spent the first sort of 25 years of my life working in television news and then as a documentary and television series filmmaker. So the crossover piece is that the skill set is as a storyteller, communicator of issues that are, certainly through my documentary work, for marginalized groups that need to be brought to light and shared. The second part, though, is that, well, there's a lot of crossovers actually when it comes to that, but the other piece of it is that I was, sorry, oh, I thought somebody was at the door.
Okay.
I was in a position of needing, I had a small child, and of course film work kept me away from home a lot. And so I was seeking something that would be meaningful, that would allow me to work with purpose, but be closer to home. And the universe opened up this door that through a documentary that I had done with the Chilcotin people on their rights and title issue. It was called Wild Horses, Unconquered People for CBC. I met the legal team that was representing them. So years later, fast forward about 4 or 5 years later, they approached me, well, the board for what would be RAVEN approached me because they, the Chilcotin and Beaver Lake Cree Nation were clients of Woodward and Company. They had launched these legal actions, but the actions and behaviors of both the federal and provincial crowns were making it clear that the cases were going to go on much longer. And so I'm just going to put in my headset and pause for 1 second. Anna, I'm on a Zoom call. I'm sorry. You weren't here, so I didn't start it over there. So
that's fine. I'll be going over there for grant meeting.
Okay, great. I'll just put my headphones on.
Do you want something from Anna?
I'm good, thanks. Sorry about that. So they had this indication that the cases weren't going to make it. So they called and said they had applied for charitable status. They had an envelope with the letter saying, here's your number. But now they needed someone to try to turn it into an actual organization. So they called and asked me if I would be interested.
Wow, that's, and is Victoria your like starting, how did you end up in Carleton? Sorry, as a side.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. Say the last part again.
So is Victoria your home base? Is that where you grew up in?
No, I'm from the Dish with One Spoon territory. But I moved my way across the country over the course of my life. So I was actually, was I in Victoria now? Yes, I was. Yeah, I was living in Victoria by then.
And it's a very impressive organization that you guys have built. I think it's really, really amazing what you're doing. And what would you say was sort of the biggest learning curve in this last 12, 15 years?
Well, with a view to female leadership and female empowerment, I think it's important to do something that, first of all, to have the level of commitment that it takes to build an organization from zero to a thriving organization. You have to truly come from why. You have to start with why. It's, there's all kinds of videos about that, but the values that you bring to it are what will keep you with it and what will and allow you to get through some times that are actually really challenging. In the beginning, when you're trying to build an organization that no one has heard of, all of us, you have not just the logistical challenges of websites and logos and branding, but you actually have to be able to talk to people and give the elevator pitch with some sense of credibility. You have to be able to follow through on your commitments. You have to be able to really live and breathe your mission statement, so that you can at some point not just have it be you. Like for the first 3 years, it was just me, and it took a really long time to have enough money come in that we could hire someone else. So you have to be able to do it with all of that in mind. And I think one of the things that I learned is that you can't live a fear-based lifestyle. If you're going to be a leader, you have to be willing, as Pema Chodron says, to stand at the edge of the abyss and not need to know what's going to come next. Because there would be times where I'd be sitting there going, I don't know how to do this. Like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. And I have no one to ask. So, okay, well, that's okay. That's fine. But 12 years later, I guess I've learned that it's important to be okay with not knowing. It's important to ask for help when you need it. It's important to get the help that you need from people who are equally invested, whether they are within or outside of your organization, and to make sure that the values are aligned all the way along, because it's one of the challenges of nonprofit organizations is something called mission creep, right? Scope creep. Everyone's heard about it. Everyone starts out with this really tiny little mission, and then someone comes along and says, oh, this would be great, but what if we just added this? This would be great. That would be really good. You go, well, maybe. Okay, well, let's think about that. And then you discover after 5 years of doing that you don't even know what you're doing anymore. And so one of the things that I feel fairly proud of is the fact that there's been zero mission creep. Zero. We have a singular focus that has kept us relevant, because if we were trying to be all things to all people, we'd be serving no one, mile wide, inch deep, nothing. By being the only organization in Canada that raises legal defense funds for nations that choose to enforce their rights, we have a fairly powerful statement, and we've been able to live that value and produce results.
And what sort of personal values do you have along that you've kind of guided you along as well?
Well, I think they come sourced from the original choice of being a journalist, in a sense of ethics that are wide-ranging, that everyone has value, that fairness and justice are the key pillars of how I would choose to live my life and how I would hope any thriving democracy would function. And so I try and live that.
And I know, as someone who's never done it, sort of that standing at the void, and how did you build the confidence to sort of do that and then be okay with not knowing and still going forward?
Several significant life failures, from failed relationship to being fired from my first job. But I was fired from my first job because the person who remains unnamed, the person who shall not be named, who was my boss, felt that I needed private coaching, and I wasn't really up for private coaching. And so on the last day of my 3-month probation, I was let go with the summary, well, you didn't improve as much as I thought you would.
Mm.
And I was counseled by people that, you can take them to human rights and you can sue. And I said, again, I'll never work in television again. And so you take that as a loss, but you rebuild by going, I still have my principles. I held true to my ethic. And when the time came and I found out that person had also blackballed me, so that when I was finding I couldn't find work, and then I finally shoehorned my way into a television station in Edmonton. And at my 1-year review, the news director said, "Wow, it's so funny because, I was told that you didn't have what it took to make it in the business." I said, "I guess we can let that narrative go now." And the other piece of that then is, if you're going to be a leader and if you're going to thrive and survive, you have to be able to let those things go in peace and tranquility. It doesn't serve me to hold on to the grudge or the anger or any of the emotions that came in the beginning. Moving right along.
And so, with that sort of in mind, how do you think that your life as a journalist and all those sort of past experiences sort of allowed you to take on your work now in sort of a new way? Like,
Right.
what did you bring from those lived experiences into what you do now?
I think resilience, optimism, the ability to think on my feet, and also I did, I'm not a religious person, but I did a whole lot of soul searching and a lot of time coming through a couple of those hard life moments that I mentioned earlier, and found a real sense of grounding in abundance and a belief in abundance, and abundance not being money, but abundance in friendships and resources and people who are there to support you, and understanding that you get what you give. So if you are open and kind and generous, that comes back in more ways than you can count. So I believe in love. This whole organization is based from a love of our planet, a love for the nations who have been so unloved and uncared for, a love for all of the people who work here. We have a very caring environment, and that's a very conscious decision as a leader to create an environment where people feel supported and cared for, that they matter. It's not just productivity or how many donors did you bring in this month, or it's how are you feeling about this work, and how are you feeling about how you fit within this organization. And that's what leads to abundance.
And how did you, I know you sort of touched on it there, but built that sort of environment? I know it's an all-women team, which, as coming from the club that I am, I'm very biased about, which I think is great.
So yeah, I don't know. Organically, one person at a time. And it wasn't, truly that wasn't intentional, in the sense that we interviewed broadly for lots of positions. Perhaps the field tends to, by its nature, draw more on the one side of the population. We found not that many men applying, frankly. But we certainly interviewed across the board, and I think it was, trying to think of an answer to your question. I guess it was just truly digging into that value set of fairness and justice and ethics that are rooted in a real giving back, and a belief that, you know, what's that saying? Was it Margaret Mead who said it? That, you know, you have to believe that, never doubt that one person can make a difference, because indeed that's how all change has happened. So never feeling there certainly were times of overwhelm in the first few years, and there's certainly some times of overwhelm even now when we get into a title case and you think, oh my gosh, this is going to be 5 years and $15 million, and how are we going to, oh wow, this is a lot. But a good friend of mine told me once years ago, you don't have to do the whole thing. You just have to do right now. You just have to do today. And so if what you do today is rooted in everything you believe in, it's going to make a difference for tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So you just have to do today and do it well.
So you just answered my next question, but I'll ask it anyway in case you have anything to add. But how do you deal with those moments of, because I know, you know, a lot of social justice work, and you're tackling two very big issues in one company, in one group. So how do you stop yourself from being sort of overwhelmed by just how much work needs to be done?
Well, yeah. So as I said, try and just focus on I think we have a great team, right? It's not just me. We talk about it. We have a strategic plan. We put the time into doing a proper strategic plan. We have an amazing board. We have a legal advisory panel. So so if there is a sense of overwhelm, just take it apart, unpack it. Okay, what is it that's overwhelming about this? Is it the timeline? Is it the scope and scale? Is it maybe it's there was a time back when there were, you know, the conservative government was in, and we were worried about being audited, and so is it the political climate? And then you just step back from it and say, okay, well, do we need to ask for help? Does it need to be fixed today? Can we just sit on it and think about it for a little bit? What if we do nothing and just be in this, stand at the edge of this particular abyss and go, all right, well, we're going to call across the abyss and see what comes back. Maybe it's not just the sound of our own voice, but maybe there'll be other people coming in saying, hey, wait, I could help you with that. Right? So like I said, it's you just have to do that moment. And if you, as leaders, some of the women that I've met that are the most incredible leaders, they are so compassionate in those moments of complete overwhelm, and particularly to themselves. They're like, wow, God, I need to go for a walk and I have to just get some air, and I need to be good to myself because I'm not good to anybody if I can't handle this. So I'm going to take a 5-minute coffee break and regroup, or a 5-day coffee break if it, it's a really big one. But I think that women do tend to, and this is a terrible broad brush, I hate speaking in general, but my experience has been that rather than always needing to fix it and do something, women will sit with it and allow for maybe more variables. And sometimes as a leader, that can lead to criticism from people who say, well, you didn't move quickly enough, or you didn't. And I'm like, well, I think the outcome is the same, but we didn't lose people along the way, and we did it from a heart-centered place. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it could have happened more quickly, but if the outcome is the same, then
Right.
we're in a good space.
Yeah, and I think that's a really amazing sort of thing to touch on, of just, like you said, sort of broad strokes, but of what a woman perspective on things can sort of change in a situation. And for someone who is potentially listening to this podcast, like I said, it's a university club, so it tends to be university students. What sort of advice would you give them if they sort of wanted to either follow your footsteps into the same sort of field that you're in, or just into a position of leadership in general? What sort of advice would you give them?
Well, over and above, I mean, it's sort of seeded throughout, but I actually think most people are generally leaders. They need to find the thing they want to lead. If that makes any sense. Sometimes I look at leadership. I didn't ask to be the leader of, have a title and be the head of some organization. I just stepped into a place that I was invited and have done it with all my heart for 12 years. If that's what leadership is, then you can do that for anything. You can do that with your family. You can do that as a friend. You can be a leader of one. Just be yourself. If being in an organization and running things isn't for you, then maybe you are the individual who's going to go out there and write the next screenplay that has everybody reframing how they look at a certain issue. I think it goes back to that living from your values and being committed to a path of personal growth, right? So I'm constantly, I'm turning 60 in January, so it feels really hard to say that sometimes. And I struggle with that because of all the gender issues and things like, or ageist issues around women and aging. But, I'm still taking courses. I still journal. I still seek counseling when I need it. I meditate every day. I have a strong practice of yoga, and I think it's really important throughout your life to constantly invest in yourself. I guess that's where I was coming from. Wasn't a very succinct way of getting there, but it's, if you're going to lead from a place of connection to your values, then you need to invest in those values and invest in yourself. And there was a brilliant interview I only watched Oprah once in my life, and it was back when I was pregnant and I couldn't hardly move, the end of my pregnancy. And she was interviewing some woman, I don't remember, about childcare, and the woman was some expert, and she'd asked the audience, so when you tier relationships, like if, you know, there's you and then there's your partner and your children, who's first? Like what's the tiering? And she was booed for saying that you are first, and then your relationship, and then your children. And the audience booed her. And I remember watching this and thinking, no, she's absolutely right. You're useless to anybody if you haven't taken care of yourself, if you haven't nourished yourself, nourished your heart, nourished your mind, nourished your body, you know, nourished your soul. Then how can you possibly be a good partner? Because you're looking for someone to fill that gap. And that's just approval seeking and coming from a place of deficit. So that's never going to be a long-term plan. So, and then you have children. So now they're even further in deficit because you spend all this time and energy. So if an organization is your child on one level, you know, an offshoot of something that you're bringing into being, you still have to nourish your heart and mind and soul and body so that you have a place to firmly be within that organization, that if something comes at you from left field, a board director decides they don't like you and they want to take you out, or you get criticism from the media that you didn't see coming, it doesn't shake you to your core and render you unable to function.
Right, that resilience piece sort of coming
That
back
resilience
in.
piece. But resilience is, as with anything, resilience, you know, elastic bands, funnily enough, if they don't get used, they dry out and they snap. So resilience has to be something that's part of your, you know, that you take care of yourself, and take holidays, right? It's so interesting to me that there are women that I've met who say, oh my gosh, I haven't had a holiday in 2 years. And I look at them and I think, yeah, you look like it. You need a break. You know, you need to sleep. You need to read good books. You need to enjoy poetry and be in nature and do all those things. And so, yeah. So it's really important coming forward. I mean, university's hard, right? Everyone gets buried and you get behind and there's deadlines and exams and there's all this crushing pressure. You think, oh my God, I'm never going to make it out of this. But you will. And the question is, are you going to emerge with your values and who you are intact, or are you going to have somehow lost yourself in the process?
Yeah, being in the middle of exams in 4th year, I can.
Mm-hmm.
Being buried is a good description. And so, our one sort of question that I think your work sort of embodies is sort of how you've applied an intersectional lens sort of to your work. You've brought up being a woman and being a mother and turning 60. And so there's a lot of obviously pieces to everyone's life and the work that you do. And so it might be a very large answer, but how have you sort of applied that intersectional lens to your work?
Oh boy, that's a big question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, slide that one in there at the end.
And it got bigger as I was asking it.
Right? It gets bigger. Well, I don't know that I don't know. I have to say I don't know. I think it's just part of what I do, you know, and that's a terrible answer. It's wow. Now I'm at the edge of an abyss because I'm like, I don't know what to say. But I guess you know, well, I was late for this interview because my daughter desperately needed a ride to school this morning because. So, you know, I try and not have those things happen, but when they do happen, it's kind of, okay, well, this is part of today's flow, and you were gracious enough to allow us to start a little bit later. And I think I do have to say, when I'm working, I'm pretty focused. I rarely look at my phone. You know, if somebody needs me, they know to call the office because I'm not checking for text messages and things like that. I'm pretty focused. I think that's probably how it is too when I'm at home. This is all just emerging out of my brain right now, but when I'm at home, I'm at home. I put my phone down. I don't do work unless I know that there's a deadline or something that I'm waiting for. My focus is on my family. I think intersectionality is definitely important, but I think it goes back to that thing I said about you just have to do right now. You can't be any good for people if you're trying to, if I'm trying to listen to my daughter talk to me about her relationship with her boyfriend and problem that she's having, if I'm checking my text messages to see if everybody, sent off the emails that were supposed to be sent about a fundraising pitch. You have to be present. And so I think what that then requires is time management. So throughout every day, I'm very clear generally, except for the start of this interview, on that one, is that I'm very clear about this is my time for this. And I make sure that space is held as much as possible, unless, barring some kind of emergency or something coming up. But so that's part of it. And I guess it just then is also all of the things that make you a good mother or a good partner or a good, I don't like to use the word good really, but a fully embodied partner and mother and boss or a friend are just part of those things that you nourish in yourself all the time and live as something that is how you want to be, right? I think that's kind of an inarticulate way of trying to express that. For years and years and years, I was really moved a long time ago by that encapsulated phrase of Mahatma Gandhi's, you must be the change you want to see in the world. It isn't exactly what he said, but people have kind of paraphrased the longer version of what he said to mean that. And it's been on the bottom of my emails for 20 years, and someone even gave me a little necklace that says, be the change. And I think in a nutshell, that's my mantra, be the change. So that's how you can embody intersectionality, because in every situation that you're in, you be how you would hope others could be. And when you're facing homeless people, we're volunteering to help a bunch of seniors this year who have no one and nothing because of COVID. You want to step in and be there fully so that you can just lift the situation and hold everyone up in love.
Well, I think that's a great answer to me putting you on the spot. So I'm very impressed. And sort of to finish off, what are the next steps sort of for you or for Raven, or both?
Well, Raven's pretty exciting these days. We have a couple of new campaigns coming that unfortunately are, until the nation's file, we can't disclose, but they're going to be quite transformational. One of it's with a nation in Ontario, and really excited about that. And so we are building to, and having come through COVID with actually a fairly strong year, because donors have understood that charities really needed an extra hand this year. So we've actually survived and thrived, I guess. So I think for Raven, the next thing is expanding what we do, right? Hopefully taking on more cases. We're launching a really interesting new program, an intervener fund, which it would take me too long to explain, but it essentially it's to give funding to interventions as opposed to huge long title actions. So nations can intervene in someone else's legal action, meaning they don't have to carry the burden of the legal action. So two mining companies could be facing off. You know, the federal government or the provincial government in the bitumen reference took on Canada over the pipeline coming through. And we funded 3 nations to just intervene so that their voices are heard all at the appeal level and then at the Supreme Court level. And it really is a interesting and strategic way of having more Indigenous voices heard through the courts and perhaps having an effect on judgments. So that's exciting for us. So the Intervener Fund will be rolling out kind of robustly in January, we hope. And then for myself, it's yeah, just moving into another decade. So I guess I'll see what that brings. Another abyss.
Yeah, very exciting one.
So yeah, so you know, at some point, eventually, I will retire and see what that looks like. But that's a ways off. So
Yeah, yeah, a few more years before that abyss comes up.
yeah.
Well, I again thank you so much for speaking with me today. I think that what you do and sort of who you are is definitely very, very inspirational. I hope everyone who listens in the future agrees with me.
Thank you so much. I really am quite honored that you reached out. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And sort of our ending, we are a little bit delayed in putting these all up, mainly because I'm not very good at technology, so it takes me a little bit. But so it'll be sometime in the new year, and I will let you know when that happens. But yeah, that's sort of all my questions, and thank you for answering them so beautifully.
That's awesome. Well, it was wonderful to meet you, and I'm really excited for the project that you're doing. And yeah, I will look forward to hearing it, and I want to hear the other speakers. I'm really excited to hear who else you had on. I know you had some other really amazing people. So
yeah, so far it's been great. I've been just soaking in all this inspiration.
Fantastic. It's a great project, and so you know, hands up to you for making it happen. Way to go.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. And have a very happy holiday. I know it's
yeah.
I
forgot about that as a whole event. Yes, happy holidays.
Right on. Okay, take care, Madeline.
You as well.
Bye.
Bye.